Hello everybody, this is Zachary aka Zypher MTG. Thanks for joining me. I have a bit of an updated standard deck tech today. I've really been playing a lot of my Jund ramp that I debuted last week, and I really enjoyed it. If I have one nitpick with the deck, it's that it didn't have much play going on until the very late game, which, of course, it's a ramp deck. It's to be expected, right? Well, I think I've shorted up just a little bit. I've made some card swaps. I even splashed a little bit of a fourth color. I tried out a couple of things. I tried out Nicol Bolas, wasn't excited. I've since started trying out the Scarab God, and it's actually been pretty darn good. So I'm going to run through some card choices here, talk about my ramp package, talk about my lands, talk about all that good fun stuff, and we'll talk a little bit about the deck. So let's talk about what we're ramping to. So the whole reason we went Jund initially instead of just sticking to the traditional Ulamog package is because some guys told me that Torment of Hailfire just isn't any good. And I thought, well, let's test it out. Turns out when you can cast Torment of Hailfire for 10, or if you can cast it after you've done a board wipe or something along those lines, Torment of Hailfire is actually pretty darn good. It's definitely not a standalone finisher, and you don't want it against every single matchup, but by golly, it's actually a pretty legitimate finisher in this particular deck. It's performed really well for me. Worldbreaker, it's the sort of the traditional second ramp target. It's a big 5/7, comes down, has reach, so it blocks both ground and flying creatures. And when it comes in, you get rid of a troublesome artifact, enchantment, or land. Against monument decks, it's really been good for me because I can just get rid of that monument, or sometimes I can get rid of a splashed color when it comes down and gets rid of a land. Enchantments, haven't really needed to get rid of those yet, but hey, it's got that flexibility there for us. And then the Scarab God is sort of my tertiary target here. It's performed really well for me. It's a 5/5 for 5, and at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. Zombies, this isn't a zombie deck. Well, guess what? Hour of Promise creates some zombies for us, and then his second ability is the whole reason to really run him in this package. Basically, for 2 blue and black, you can exile target creature from a graveyard, any graveyard, not necessarily your own. You make a copy of it, and it's a 4/4 black zombie. So, I've actually been in a couple situations where if I'm digging, I'm not finding that Torment of Hailfire, not finding that Worldbreaker, I've actually just won the game with the Scarab God. He comes down, I exile a card out of their graveyard, and create a zombie, and then I get to scry and keep digging, and then I get the turn back, and suddenly I create 2, and then I create 2 more, and before long I've taken over the board. Now, this card really isn't any good against non-creature decks, so against control, you're definitely going to take the Scarab God out. But we've actually got I think a pretty decent package against control once we get going. So let's talk about the ramp spells real quick. We've sort of gone over our ramp targets. The ramp spells, we're going to start big. Hour of Promise at 5. So for 4 and a green, you get to search your library for up to 2 land cards, put them into the battlefield tapped, shuffle your library, and then if you control 3 or more deserts, create 2/2/2 black zombie creature tokens. Hour of Promise is super performed for me in this deck. I'm running 8 deserts, which isn't a lot, but all you need is 1 desert in play when you go dig for that first time, and you're going to get some zombies. So it creates some blockers, clogs up the ground a little bit, buys you a little bit of time, plus ramps you. It does double duty in this deck, and it is it feels like one of the best cards in the entire deck. So I always love keeping a hand with an Hour of Promise and at least one desert in it. Then we've got 2 natural connections, 2 and a green. Go grab a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. And 4 Beneath the Sands. It's the exact same thing, but it's got cycling stapled on there. So sometimes, especially, I'm only running 8 basics, which feels a little low, but splashing into that 4th color took me from 10 basics down to 8 because I'm running 2 more non-basics. It hasn't hurt me too bad yet. I've played about 10 matches, and it hasn't felt bad with 8, but I could definitely see you deciding, I don't know if I want the blue in there for Scarab God. I definitely like him. I think that it's exactly the type of recursive tertiary threat that you want in this deck, but we're running a whole bunch of cards that go find basic lands, and if you draw too many of them, or if you draw them in the wrong order, it could definitely hurt you. The nice thing is, Beneath the Sands, with that cycling stapled on there, it hasn't been too much of an issue. If I draw one late game, and even if I've got a basic land in deck, a lot of times I just want to cycle it away, try and go find a threat anyways. Servant of the Conduit, 2 mana 2/2, comes in with 2 energy. Tap, pay an energy, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So another sort of double duty card in here. It's going to allow us to play a blocker down on turn 2, especially against aggressive opponents. You really need a couple early plays like that throughout the deck. So Servant of the Conduits is a blocker when you need it, and it's going to ramp you from 2 to 4, or from 3 to 5, which is really our big goal there. We want 5 mana on turn 4, if we can get it, so that we can fire off an Hour of Promise, hit a World Breaker, and sort of take over the game at that point. And then at 1 mana, Attune with Ether, that just allows us to sort of smooth out our draws. As long as I have green mana on turn 1, which I absolutely should, I'm running a whole bunch of green sources, I am going to go grab that second mountain, or go grab that swamp that I need, whatever the case may be, so it sort of smooths out those draws a little bit as well. Let's talk about our protection suite. We'll start with a Braid. Braid is really flexible. It allows you to deal 3 damage to target creature at instant speed, or destroy an artifact. I found that against a lot of aggressive decks, the ability to just go, kill a Bomat Courier if Bomat Courier is sort of the worst case scenario there, or a Scrap Heap Scrounger, or get rid of a monument, whatever the case may be. That artifact pops up a lot more than you think that it does. Granted, the two examples I gave of artifact creatures would have died to the 3 damage anyways, but it's just the flexibility of it, really important. You definitely want 2 in the main board. I've got 2 more in the sideboard, but 2 in the main board has felt right so far. I've got 3 Sweltering Suns. That's going to be 1 red, deal 3 damage to each creature, with cycling 3 stapled on there, so that's super helpful. Hour of Devastation is 5 mana, 3 red. Each creature loses indestructible, deals 5 damage to each creature, and each planeswalker that's not named Nicol Bolas. Downside is it does hit our Chandra, but that's not the worst thing. A lot of times I'm able to maneuver situations where I either just don't play Chandra before the board wipe, that way she can act as spot removal after the board wipe, or I'm able to put her down, depending on the deck that I'm going against. Put her down, plus her, and then fire off an Hour of Devastation afterwards. Chandra is just a really good utility walker. Definitely want 2 of her in this deck. Her +1 being able to go and dig for that late game threat as the game progresses is really, really valuable, as well as ramping us up from 4 to 7, as long as I can make a land drop the turn after, so that I can still cast that World Breaker on curve. If something doesn't go right and I don't get that Beneath the Sands, or if I've missed a land drop a little early, Chandra's able to sort of catch us up there with that mana, as long as I can stick her and keep her around. So there you have it. There is the protection suite in the deck. Let's talk a little bit about lands, because running 4 colors definitely does take a toll on the mana here. I did go up to 26 lands from 25, just so that I could guarantee some consistency. So I'm running 4 Blooming Marshes. I've got 2 excuse me. I'm running 4 Blooming Marshes. I was running 2 Botanical Sanctums, but I decided that I wanted an extra basic land, so I ended up swapping out one of my 2 Botanical Sanctums for a 4th basic forest. So that still allows me, with an Ipnu Rivulet and a one-off basic island, to cast Scarab God, and hopefully I only have to activate him 1 time each turn. But I do have 3 blue sources, so that worst case scenario, if I'm in a situation where I absolutely need it, I can definitely activate him twice, as long as I've got 8 mana. Ipnu Rivulet, I go find with that Hour of Promise. Botanical Sanctum, if I really need it, I can find off of an Hour of Promise as well. So there's sort of some of the flexibility there. And then sort of the one-off basic island, I have all sorts of ways to go grab that. I have 3 Hash Up Oasis, 1 Ifnir Deadlands, 1 Ipnu Rivulet, 3 Random Map Ruins. Definitely the 3 Hash Up Oasis, 100% you want. It's really the worst desert in the entire deck, but it's a green source, so you want to guarantee yourself as many green sources as possible. Random Map Ruins hasn't super performed either. However, it does have a good effect on there. Ifnir Deadlands is the best desert in the deck, but you only want one of them. You can sacrifice the other deserts to Ifnir Deadland, so you always want to find your Ifnir Deadlands off of your Hour of Promise, and usually a Ramanap Ruins as well. Those are the 2 deserts that I go and find the most often. I've got 4 Sheltered Thickets, just the green-red dual land with cycling stapled onto it. Anything with cycling has felt really good in this deck. Cycling really smooths out its draws, allows you to only run 3 Torment of Hailfire instead of 4, because I found that I'm drawing an extra 2 to 3 cards a game just off of cycling. And having that consistency of not getting 2 torments very often really helped. When I was running 4, I was just getting stuck with 2 torments in hand way too often, and it's just not something you want until you're ready for it. So 3 has felt much better. As far as basic lands go, you've got 4 forests, 1 island, 2 mountains, 2 swamps. So it ends up being 9 basic lands, not 8, excuse me. I misspoke a little earlier because the version I was running pre this was only 8. But I decided that the 4th basic forest there was more important than the 2nd Botanical Sanctum. So let's go ahead, let's go look at the sideboard real quick. So, the sideboard sort of shores up our games against a couple different kinds of decks. I've got 2 Ulamog the Ceaseless Hungers in here, because sometimes Ulamog just absolutely is the right finisher for the job, no questions asked. Especially against control matchups, things of that nature. Ulamog has a meaningful effect even if they manage to counter it. You can go in, you can exile, in the case of like blue-red, you exile both of their Wandering Fumaroles or whatever the case may be, and you make it a little bit harder for them to close out the game, even if they manage to counter that Ulamog. I've got 4 Walking Ballistas in here against Red Deck Winds, which has been resurgent lately, as well as some of the other decks. If you're starting to see some 1 toughness creatures, Walking Ballistas absolutely are going to be fantastic for you. I've got 1 of a Tireless Tracker, again against some of those creature decks, stuff like that, or against really grindy matchups. If you can land 1 of the Tireless Trackers and get a couple clues off of it, that definitely is going to make a huge difference, because just 1 or 2 extra cards drawn allows you to get to those finishers just even that much faster. I have the 4th Hour of Devastation. I have the 4th Sweltering Suns. I also have 2 Bantu's Last Reckoning. So post-board I have access to up to 10 sweeper effects. That feels right. I was running 12 previously. That's just a little overkill. But 10 has been pretty good against a lot of the monument decks, especially. Being able to just wipe the board, ramp, wipe the board, ramp, wipe the board, and then cast a finisher has been really good. I've got 2 Abrades. Those always come in against monument decks. And then I have 1 Liliana's Defeat. Funny thing about Liliana's Defeat, it actually will kill a Bolas Planeswalker because it is a black Planeswalker. So that's in there because Grixis decks have been becoming a little bit more popular as well as people are exploring what Nicol Bolas will do. And then Chandra's Defeat, we're going to deal 5 damage to a red creature, a red Planeswalker. Again, also hits a Bolas Planeswalker, but there's lots of Chandras popping around as well. Not 4 ofs in most of the decks, but 1 here, 2 there. And then also for like Glory Bringers, things of that nature, Chandra's Defeat just does a really good job of sort of sometimes you just need that 1 extra card to bring into a matchup, and Chandra's Defeat and Liliana's Defeat have done pretty well for me so far. So there you have it. There is my new Jund ramp, now splashing a little bit of blue for the Scarab God. And I gotta say, I'm actually impressed with the deck overall. I've played a little over 10 of the tournament prep matches in standard open play on Magic Online. I've played a little bit of red deck wins. I've played some Monument. I've even played a couple control matchups. A 3rd Ulamog may be necessary against control matchups if control is super relevant in your metagame. But overall, the deck's been really good. I've only lost a couple of those matches, and I've felt really in control much of the time. So, there you have it, guys. Here is the updated Jund list. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Leave me a comment in the down below, and let me know what you guys think.